On October 12th, 2021, a game would release that would give Markiplier his greatest video in over 10 months. And when something like that happens, you tune in to see what all the fuss is about. It's a short, simple, well-executed game with just enough holes in its plot to get the lore masters salivating. And the creature that pursues the player throughout the chapter is one of the most memorable ever. While some people appreciated the game in less respectable ways, others became enamored with the idea of pushing the speed at which you could clear the game to its absolute limit. You're probably thinking to yourself, Spiff, how the hell would this month-old game have a rich and juicy world record history? Videos like this are supposed to be reserved to the classics, like the first Zelda game, Barbie and the Magic of Pegasus, Among Us Clicker, Pooh. You know, the games that have had years to cocoon and evolve into the beautiful speedrunning butterflies that they are today. Well, the difference there is that while classics had dry spells where maybe one run would get submitted a month or a year, rarely does an hour go by in Poppy Playtime that a run isn't submitted. If the world record progression of the classics was a game of chess between a handful of dedicated runners, then Poppy Playtime speedrunning has been an anime fight scene that spans 10 episodes while only half a second passes in the show and everyone's got an invite to take a crack at it themselves. Cuphead, 248 runs. The original Wii Sports, 155. The hit 2017 game Granny, only 70. And Poppy Playtime has a monstrous 400 submitted runs. We're on the cusp of overtaking speedrun behemoths like Mario 64 and Roblox Bed Wars Beta. Together, we pack a sufficient punch to do to the world record what has taken years in other games, with groups of people dedicated to glitch hunting and finding skips, and another group dedicated to pushing the time as low as it can go. I'm making this video because recently, both major Poppy Playtime categories had the world record smashed, and what is probably the last minute barrier of each of them was broken. This is the story of what modern speedrunning can become. Now that running a game is at the forefront of many gamers' minds before the game is even released. Poppy Playtime created one of the biggest speedrun communities at release in gaming history, and here's what we managed to do to the game in just over a month. I'm going to be covering both main categories in this video, because, well, we only started with one. On this day I played Poppy for the first time. I looked up a speedrun on YouTube since it wasn't on speedrun.com yet, and I found Ivan's 7-minute 38-second time, claiming to be the first sub 740. This wasn't the first recorded speedrun of Poppy. In fact, there were 5 that came before it. An 8-minute 54 run by Tim Trollgasm, then an 8:26, then Ivan posted his first run in 8 minutes 7 seconds. Ostrich Insanity would be the first person to get under 8 minutes, with an 8-minute 1 second run, and then a 7:56 the same day. These runs, however, were littered with mistakes, which can only be expected when the game had come out only a few days prior. Ivan's 7-minute 36-second time is the first I'll consider a world record, since it was a league ahead of the rest, and it was the first run to feature Poppy Playtime's very first speedrun skip. Here's how it went. With soft tunes playing to completely offset the horror element, he breezed through the buttons and inserted the tape, then waited for it to finish playing while passing the time kicking a TV monitor around. Something I myself would spend a lot of time doing. That is, before we found out that we could replace what the tapes played to entertain ourselves while waiting. That you can collect from the top. Oh yeah, baby. I had forgotten.
I shit in my toilet. How about you?
Once the glass pane lowered, he collected the blue hand at 1 minute 11 seconds, entered the hub, and turned on the power. It was clean, but slow. He walked down the hall and collected all 4 batteries as quickly as possible, making a couple mistakes, but they lined up well for him. And for what was his second day running the game, it was an amazing pace. He collected the red hand and performed the Rookie skip, which had been found at launch by Rookie-san.
Oh, I'm stupid as hell.
If you position yourself here and try to grab the power outlet nipple, your hand will just bounce back. But if you click to shoot, then click and hold again before it grabs the thing, it will hold on, allowing you to hold both at once. You still have to connect the power to the post, so you just walk backwards into it. For some reason, the game flings you forward, immediately arriving on the conveyor belt towards the Make a Toy room. The conveyor belt ride is very slow, and you can't go any faster by running, something that any % runners wouldn't have to worry about for long. Ivan then proceeded as normal, jumping around the railings and the rafters as to not have to pull the platform, and dropping down to turn the power on as quickly as possible. He stood near Huggy's door when the toy Catpy was finished construction, so he could immediately place it down, and the sounds of birds chirping could be heard as he fled from Huggy emerging from the darkness. The chase was clean, and he'd clearly already memorized it, jumping near the end to avoid slowing down, but unfortunately had to grab the box at the bottom in slow motion. He ran through the halls leading to Poppy and opened her cage at 7 minutes 38 seconds, clapping intensely to himself in celebration. Well done, Ivan. The next day, a new competitor emerged, Speedrun, with a time that just barely edged out Ivan, beating him by 2 seconds that could be accounted for in the battery section alone, where TSRs were lined up in a much more straightforward way. Ivan didn't stand for that though, and on the same day, with the power of his calming upbeat tunes, Ivan got a run with clean movement and a fast grab on the last box, to slap TSR's time with a 7:31 of his own, in their quest to get a run under 7.5 minutes. Despite Ivan's impressive movement given how new the game was, it was TSR who had claimed the first sub 7:30. I'll let these batteries speak for themselves. But it wasn't that alone that netted TSR the time, but a new little skip that made the difference. Instead of jumping around the outside of the rafters or running around and grabbing the power slowly, TSR just jumped the gap. A jump that could be considered impossible at first glance and was likely dismissed as so in development, but could just barely be cleared to hook up the power quicker, saving 5 seconds.
Oh my lord! Oh my lord!
Oh my god!
No way! It's actually on your pickle something. What the fuck?
Let's go, dude!
This would mark the end of Poppy Playtime's 4 days of having a small community, because Ivan had just gotten the game onto speedrun.com, and it was about to blow up into one of the most speedrun games at launch ever. This is when I found the game. It only had 5 submitted runs the first time I looked at the leaderboard, and to be honest, I had little to no interest in running the game. From my perspective, it was a simple game with 3 long periods of nothing to do but wait, and not a lot to optimize. It was Mythic Cheese's interest in the game that won me over, since I had speedrun Little Nightmares 2 alongside him. Mythic is a name you're going to want to remember, because you know those 3 waiting periods I mentioned? Well, Mythic was going to be a big part in removing them. In the next few days, the game would explode. Dozens of new runners submitted times, including myself, and I made my first video on the run, which is very outdated already. While we were trying to catch up, Ivan continued his reign of terror. On October 22nd, he pulled off a 7:27. Speedrun answered later in the day with a 7:25, but then, still within the same 24 hours, Ivan got this run. With those buttons, batteries, and overall execution, Ivan had secured one hell of a lead above everyone else. Like these buttons, honestly, those are faster than what mine are even now. Not to mention that I reset 10 times before I even get good buttons once. At this point, I wondered how much further we could realistically push the run. My roommate and I came up with a quicker way of climbing these stairs that saved 1 to 2 seconds, and I theorized that if all 3 batteries were in perfect spots, you could climb along this wall and pick them up without having to open up the big door and go around. Which, if done right, would crush Ivan's time and maybe even push towards sub 7 minutes. But even reloading the game over and over, I never saw all batteries spawn on the right side, only an inferior 2 right, 1 left battery setup, which might not even get me world record if I got it, considering I was still 15 seconds behind Ivan in overall execution. So that idea was pretty much just scrapped. Full days passed without a new world record. Over 100 new players submitted runs, most of which not knowing that there's this handy live split setting called global hotkeys that you should ask me about sometime. I joined the moderation team alongside Ivan and a few others, and we seemed at a loss finding new skips. We had no idea what was to come in the next couple weeks.
Oh my fucking god, it's gonna be close, man. I'm gonna miss it by 1 second, maybe 2. Oh my fucking...
The real problem with finding skips in this game was the map itself. While it posed no challenge getting out of bounds in a couple areas, you couldn't just get out of bounds and walk to the next area. First off, the game map is suspended above the void, so going out of bounds often just means falling into nothing permanently. The other issue is that even if you could parkour across segments out of bounds, most of the game isn't loaded all at once, so you'd have nowhere to go. The only way we were going to find a big skip is if someone found a way to get out of bounds, parkour to a new section, and find a checkpoint, and cross it, because then you could reload your game, and the game would properly load in everything you need. That's a lot of things that have to come together perfectly. I'd already made my out of bounds video, and we had a veritable team of glitch hunters at this point who had yet to find anything. Well, I hope you remembered the name Mythic, because on November 1st, after 8 days of stagnancy across the top of the leaderboard, that's exactly what he would find. When pulled with your gloves, objects can get stuck, and you can walk on them. And then they'll remember what gravity is and fall once you jump off. By grabbing an object and waiting for it to stop shaking at the railing, you're able to jump to the first conveyor up top, since this has an invisible wall blocking access. And all of these conveyors lead out of bounds. Mythic chose the tub because despite its irregular shape, it lifted quickly and at 60 frames per second and only 60 frames per second. 30 FPS means too slow a lift, and 90 or 120 FPS means that is zipping over your face and your gloves are simply gonna let it go. From there, he jumped to the furthest conveyor, went towards the out of bounds, and made the hardest jump in the game, towards the vent across the gap. Once there, he found a soft spot in the vent where you were let in. Like I mentioned before, the next part of the game wasn't loaded in, but thankfully the end of the vent also marked a new checkpoint, so that red hand you never picked up, there you go. And with a simple reload checkpoint, the level would appear. No more batteries, no more waiting for the red hand, no more electricity puzzle. It took a bit to lift the tub for the jump, but overall this skip saved a minute. Never mind sub 7 minutes, suddenly we had our eyes set on sub 6. It was November 2nd, and things got weird on the leaderboard for a couple days. Suddenly, Ivan's seemingly untouchable 723 was destroyed multiple times in a day. November 2nd was easily the biggest day in Poppy Playtime, as there would be not 1, not 2, but 5 new world records. The record was fair game for the many runners who had been refining their skills in an effort to dethrone Ivan. South Korean legend Entorino was the first and crushed it by almost a minute by taking full advantage of its potential, as well as a new little strategy of his own, now referred to as Entorino Slide. At the end of the Huggy Chase, instead of sliding and turning around to grab the box, Entorino flicked that bad boy on the way down, so it dropped quicker and saved a few seconds, earning him a 6-minute, 31-second time. Ivan himself pulled off a 6:30 to retake the throne, and Flower Boy tasted the sweet taste of being the best with a lower 630, risen on top of so many emerging competitors.
We did it, 663. Thanks, fuck. Amen, dude.
For almost 45 minutes. And Torino again took back the record with a 628. With this massive new skip, it became pretty clear that we couldn't stick with just one main category. The difficulty that was involved in pulling off what was now called RHS, for Red Hand Skip, was immense, and would bottleneck many would-be speedrunners, who didn't want to spend hours practicing a super unforgiving jump. And I don't blame them. I made a video on what is essentially a fail compilation of me trying to do that damn jump. So we decided to do a category split. Any percent runs would be done with RHS, while NMG, no major glitches, runs would continue as before, without RHS. So you might think that with all the runs that used RHS moved to the any percent category, Ivan's impressive 723 would once again reign supreme over the NMG leaderboard. But you'd be wrong. It's Holo, a fellow moderator, had caught up to Ivan and beat his time by just over a 1/10 of a second. But on the same day, Ivan answered back, barely managing to shave off another full second off the run, standing tall at the top of the NMG category once again with a 722. Margins like those are an example of how good players had become at the movement of the game already, and we'd need more skips if we were to keep going. So, the community went to work. Poots and Doots finished the load remover for the game, which meant that with the click of a button, Live Split could read when the game was paused or loading, and pause your timer. This was huge for the emerging any percent category, since we had to reload after hitting that checkpoint at the end of the vent. The load remover would pause our time during that loading duration, thus lowering every run's time by 5 to 10 seconds. This would also slowly open our eyes to the potential time save involved with reloading checkpoints. The race was on to optimize any percent. The new frontier of Poppy Playtime speedrunning was still so much optimization to be had. By accident, Ivan had discovered a new skip while messing around with Huggy coming through the warehouse doors. I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen a video of something like this happening. And Ivan was checking out what kind of cool launches he could get when he found something interesting. See, normally if you just stand still in the hall where Huggy emerges, he pushes you out before chowing down on your intruding ass. But sometimes, depending on how you position the boxes just outside the door, Huggy can be forced out a lot quicker. Sometimes a lot quicker. And of course, you're along for the ride. Since your goal is to get to the vent to escape, this could be between 2 to 6 seconds time save. Unfortunately, despite every runner trying around this time to get it, only Ivan had been successful. Even when T-Speedrun emerged with a 624 to take the any percent record, the fifth and final time the any percent leaderboard had seen a top runner in a single day. He had tried the setup for what was being referred to as Huggy Zip and gotten no boost.
It's still fine, it's still wood record. It's still slow.
The next day, competition continued. With the load remover in full swing, runners were fully able to take advantage of reloading checkpoints. Instead of waiting for the glass pane to lower all the way before picking up the grab pack, runners started reloading checkpoint the moment it started to move. This checkpoint was given the moment this happened, so upon loading the game you'd have the blue hand, shaving off a few seconds. With this, Ivan pulled off a 621, once again owning both any percent and NMG world records. But something was about to happen to Poppy Playtime that would change it forever. Or should I say, someone. AJ was already experienced in speedrunning, having held multiple world records in It Takes Two, so he knew what it took and was ready to perform. By the time I met this guy, he'd been practicing Poppy runs for 2 days and provided a live split screenshot with 1,700 resets on it. Every time you quit or reset, this little number goes up by 1. And while many of those resets would have just come from failed buttons, since I swear to God half the time that red button does not press, 1,702 days is a number that I think well represented AJ's determination to make himself known in the scene. After only 2 days of running the game, he crushed Ivan's 621 any percent world record with a 614 run of his own. So what made AJ such a, well, beast? How could he surpass Ivan's run by such a margin just a couple days after starting runs? Maybe it was Ludwig's stream that he was watching during his run.
I'm not even gonna read the rest.
Okay. Yeah, no, mine came up first. No,
Kitty?
on God, you guys saw it. Mine
I
came up
didn't see
first.
anything.
No, did you see?
I didn't see anything.
But perhaps more likely, it was that AJ didn't accept anything but near perfection, and was willing to go through the numbers to achieve it. His reload for the blue hand was tighter on time, since he would reload at a specific time instead of waiting for a visual cue. And while that meant the occasional early reload mistake, it meant that success saved time over waiting to see the glass pane move. Lines were smoother. He jumped upstairs at every opportunity, despite the risk of a somewhat common bug happening where you're no longer able to jump. He had little to no hesitation on the RHS jump and immediately clipped into the vent. He wasn't able to get Huggy Zip, but everything was smooth enough for him to take big steps ahead of everyone. And AJ wasn't about to stop there. The next day he struck again, this time at the other main category, where time was already incredibly tight. He finished a run with a 7:21, beating Ivan by just 1 second.
Let's go.
AJ, did you get the
go.
pre? Did you get the box? You got the box.
No new strats, just clean execution at nearly every stage of the game. At this point, Poppy Playtime had claimed its spot where it still stands as the 4th most speedrun game right now. A handful of top runners, myself included, slowly lowered our own any percent times towards AJ's impressive 6:14. And someone relatively new to the scene was about to show us that AJ wasn't the only player who could make massive strides towards a sub 6-minute time that had been considered not likely to ever happen just 1 week ago. Remember Ivan's insane 7:23 that held for a week? Here's what Mutant showed us on November 7th. Between that and the cleanest RHS setup we'd ever seen, Mutant was able to lower the record to just 6 minutes and 6 seconds. He didn't get the Huggy Zip or Entorino Slide, so runners immediately began setting their sights on a 6-minute any percent time by including those strats that Mutant missed in their runs, knowing that sub 6 minutes would be the last minute barrier the category would see without the blue hand skip. That's right. Mythic Cheese was at it again. After finding the red hand skip, he had become familiar with how the game's checkpoints work, and knew that if he could get out of bounds at the start of the game and just hit that next checkpoint, the game would give us the blue hand early and we'd skip that long minute of wait time after putting in the blue VHS. There were cases of players clipping through the wall using one of the nearby toys, so Mythic used tools to teleport himself out there, and actually did it. There was a specific way you could move out of bounds, and once you were in position, jumping into the void landed you in the next checkpoint, so reloading gave the blue hand. Great, so surely now we had skips for both hands, and we could easily break sub 6 minutes, maybe even sub 5 minutes in any percent. Well, not exactly. The couple times players had been able to clip out of bounds had either been complete flukes while messing around, or had taken hours to pull off. The prospect of starting a run, going at the wall and clipping out of bounds within 30 seconds or so to save time was unthinkable without any sort of setup, so blue hand skip would be left in the dust. We were going to get that sub 6 minute any percent run, but blue hand skip was not going to get us there. 2 days later, AJ struck back against Mutant in any percent with a 6:03 time. He'd found a smoother way of clipping into the vent, and managed to get both Huggy Zip using an improved setup and Entorino Slide with a smooth flick. The question became, who was it that was going to break the sub 6 minute time? While not necessarily the final minute barrier in any percent, since we had the blue hand skip in the back pocket, certainly the last one for a very long time. Before that would happen, however, NMG, the category considered near optimized to perfection, was about to see a couple new big runs, as a small skip revolution of sorts was about to unfold that would take the NMG world record closer and closer to what would definitely be its final minute barrier. I say definitely because no major glitches means that the game has to be played normally, with the exception of small skips like Rookie Skip and Huggy Zip. Anything like RHS that saves a lot of time wouldn't be allowed for NMG. While any percent is always at the mercy of new potential groundbreaking skips, The very nature of NMG means that if someone managed to get under 7 minutes, that would be the last minute saved. On November 9th, your Melonian fellow discovered that if you grab this yellow cube and hit the corner of the doorway perfectly, 2 grab pack wires would appear, and if you started pulling the cube, you'd be flung down the hallway at hyper speeds. It wasn't yet very viable because of the lack of a consistent setup that guaranteed time save, so when I Eat Weenus started a run on November 12th, he didn't even try to get it. He did, however, have something new to showcase, something that would become a big part of chipping down the NMG time towards going under 7 minutes. Until this run, we had been waiting for the Cat B to be brought along the conveyor until the opening before grabbing it. But Weenus noticed that the grab pack hands could clip through the glass beforehand. So while he was already on PB pace, he did this. Grabbing the cat saved 5 seconds, and Weenus broke the NMG record with a 7:18. The first time the record for the category had been broken by over a second since like mid-October. Weenus was not nearly done, however, because 2 days later he would take another massive step ahead of the rest of us, setting one of the biggest NMG world records ever with a 7-minute, 9-second run. The craziest thing about this run is that there were no new skips. Hyperspeed Hallway had a setup now thanks to Melonian, but he didn't get it quite right. And he didn't even try to position the boxes for Huggy Zip. His batteries were unreal, and he added style points with a cheeky platform grab that I'd been doing for the memes, and had a good Entorino slide to top it off. The next day, Ivan was back, baby, and he came for his NMG world record, becoming the first world record to get Hyperspeed Hallway. Unfortunately, he missed the early cat grab, and even after setting up the boxes, Huggy Zip as well. Despite those imperfections, Ivan finished his run with a 7:06. Now, both major categories stood in the exact same position, both on the precipice of a huge minute barrier, and both with many runners who could claim the title. Checkpoint reloads, Hyperspeed Hallway, good batteries, red hand skip, rookie skip, early cat grab, Huggy Zip, and Entorino slide. Whichever runner could combine all of those elements together in either category would claim the first 5 or 6 minute run. This brings us to the legendary day in Poppy Playtime speedrunning. That is November 17th. Perhaps you recognize the voice and know where this is going. But if not, there was one runner in particular who was up to the challenge. Someone was about to break not one, but both main category minute barriers. And that runner was none other than AJ.
Oh, I got method cubes. Alright, here we go.
Let's start with NMG. AJ's last personal best in the category had been a 7-minute 21-second time. So how the heck did he lower his time so significantly to get under 7 minutes? Well, do you remember at the start of the video when I mentioned that I had theorized about a potential battery spawn pattern where all the batteries were within reach from the top? If that was ever the case, you wouldn't have to open the big door or climb the stairs, just grab your batteries and put them in. It had the potential to be a massive time save, but just wasn't very viable. A runner named Chamber had seen a pattern in one of his runs where all 3 batteries spawned on the right side.
No shot! No way! Huh?
So we knew it was possible. The odds were probably around 1 in 100 of them lining up, and even if they did, you'd have to be prepared to react to that in order for it to save time. No one had been willing to go through the insane amount of attempts it would take to see the pattern, including AJ. But we had neglected the fact that if you reloaded checkpoint, the batteries would be in a whole new place. With the load remover pausing the timer during reloads, you could roll the battery dice multiple times before the time leak became too much and you had to reset. This made the odds far greater, and that's exactly what AJ did.
Oh, I got method cubes. Alright, here we go.
That combined with a couple new checkpoint reloads that saved just a fraction of a second each. Hyperspeed hallway, almost the smoothest stairs we've ever seen. Cat clip and Entorino slide, AJ broke the final minute barrier of NMG by just the tiniest margin.
Oh my fucking...
A tenth of a second difference. His checkpoint reloads that may have seemed silly to some for their negligible time save got AJ that first ever 7-minute run in no major glitches. And what do you do when you accomplish something like that? Well, of course, you just go right ahead and do it again in the other category. The run may have had a mediocre start for AJ when he missed Hyperspeed hallway, but that was about to change. After a super clean and quick tub jump and vent clip, he was still behind 3 seconds. Fairly smooth stairs helped, but the run-defining moment was about to happen. Up until now, we haven't seen much of the Huggy Zip. And from what we have seen, it isn't that insane. But AJ was about to change that.
Oh my lord. Oh my lord.
Oh my god.
No way.
Look at that. From one end of the room to the other in a tenth of a second. And a rare cameo from Huggy. Needless to say, this did the trick. AJ took his victory lap through the chase, slapped Huggy a couple times to rub it in, and bounced his way to victory. Even picking up the black tape to assert dominance.
Picking up tape because someone was yelling and picking it up.
Man, the myth, the fucking legend.
This is like 5:53.
World
by the
records.
way.
5:53? Damn. Alright, the man, the myth, the legend. Fucker gets 2 world records in one day.
5:50 is possible. There you go.
What a beast. 2 world records in one day.
AJ is a beast. And it's not just his execution of skips that found him success, but his tiny optimizations that no one else really thought about, matched with an insane level of determination and a lot of practice. Our little speedrun has grown to over 400 players now. We're still finding little skips, and while there's no doubt that more people will match and overcome AJ's times, the 2 records he set on November 17th will never be forgot by the community who have been along for the ride so far. While I don't quite take myself for a documentary-style creator, I thought it would be important for me to make a video like this because I was there for all of this since the beginning. Always sitting around 5th to 10th place. For now. I've been able to meet a ton of great people in this game, and I hope I was able to edify their achievements in this video, because it's been an awesome month tearing the game apart. We're not quite done, but I'm already looking forward to Chapter 2. As always, I stream my own speedruns, and I've been trying to beat the whole game blindfolded, if you're interested in watching that live. It's going to be a pretty full description, because as much as possible, I want to credit the runners who deserve it. Thanks for watching. See you later.